Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Just picture this. It is late autumn. The air is crisp. And the driveway outside is just, I mean, it's absolutely buried in dead leaves.
Yeah.
You're sitting in a slightly drafty garage.
Okay, I'm with you.
You're wearing a brand new, stiff corduroy jacket that kind of makes that zip-zip sound when you move your arms.
Oh, I know that sound.
You crack open a cold can of Tab soda, and you're sitting there with your best friend, feeling like the world is moving faster than it ever has before.
That is a very, very specific setting. I can practically smell the autumn air and the gasoline from the lawnmower in the corner.
It sets the scene perfectly, doesn't it? And that's exactly where we're going today. We are taking a deep dive into a really unique document.
Not our usual white paper.
Or no, not a scholarly article. It's a time capsule report titled Nostalgi-AI Leave. And it is specifically capturing the cultural zeitgeist of November 1980.
Which is such a fascinating moment to just freeze in time. November 1980, we are right on the cusp of so many massive cultural shifts.
Right.
The 70s are officially in the rearview mirror, but the 80s, at least, the neon-soaked version we all remember, they haven't quite kicked in yet.
Exactly. It's this weird limbo period. And what I love about this source material is the format itself. It's written in this high-energy bro talk style.
Right.
It's basically a transcript of two guys broadcasting live from their garage. They have no idea what's coming. Not next year, not even next week. They're just reacting.
And that present tense perspective is so valuable. Usually when we look back at 1980, we see it through the lens of, nostalgia or historical analysis. We know how it all turns out.
Yeah, we know about the Cold War, the tech boom, all of it.
But these two hosts, they don't know any of that. They're just living in the now.
And according to them, the now is intense. One of the first things they mention right in the intro is that life feels pretty fast right now.
Which is a sentiment we always think belongs to us, right? To
Yeah.
the internet age. Of course, we think we're the ones with the fast-paced lives because of smartphones and social media. But here you have two guys in 1980 drinking Tab, feeling that exact same acceleration.
It really challenges our assumptions.
It does.
So our mission today is to unpack that feeling.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the movies, the music, the TV, and the tech that were defining this specific month. And let me tell you, when you stack it all up,
It's a lot.
it is. A boxing movie that changed acting forever, a TV cliffhanger that literally stopped the globe, and a piece of tech that looks like science fiction. You start to see why they felt a little overwhelmed.
It really was a convergence of media events, not just one thing happening, but a sensory bombardment from every angle.
Okay, so let's jump right into the cinema. The source material puts us right in the theater seat. The big movie on everyone's lips in the garage this month is Raging Bull.
Martin Scorsese's masterpiece. And what's interesting here is how the source describes the immediate reaction to it. It's not the academic appreciation we have for it today.
Oh no, it's visceral. It's raw. The hosts in the source are absolutely raving about it, but they sound almost shaken by it.
Shaken is a good word.
They mention that Robert De Niro has transformed himself literally. And they aren't just using literally as a filler word there. They're talking about the physical change.
Right. The source notes the specific rumor that was floating around that De Niro gained 60 pounds for the role.
60 pounds.
We have to pause and appreciate how shocking that was in 1980. Today, we're used to Christian Bale doing these wild body transformations or actors getting shredded for a Marvel movie. It's almost expected.
So it's part of the job now.
But in 1980, that kind of method acting, that extreme physical commitment to basically destroying your own body for art, it was headline news.
It was almost confusing to them. Like, why would he do that? The source describes the visual style of the film, too.
Yeah.
They specifically talk about the black and white cinematography.
And what do they say about it?
One of the hosts says it makes the boxing matches look like getting punched in the face.
That's a fantastic description. It highlights how aggressive and how raw the film felt to audiences. You have to remember, blockbusters back then were usually these polished, colorful spectacles. You had Star Wars, you had Superman.
Right.
Then here comes Scorsese stripping all the color away. It wasn't the escapism people might have been used to. It was gritty. It was confronting.
It's funny you mention blockbusters because the source explicitly compares it to Rocky.
Which makes total sense. They're the two defining boxing movies of that era.
For sure. But the source says it's a tough call which one is better. However, they draw a hard line in the sand. Raging Bull is definitely darker.
And that distinction is crucial. It's crucial for understanding the mood of November 1980. You have Rocky, from 76, which is this ultimate triumph of the human spirit.
The underdog wins.
Or at least wins the moral victory. It's optimistic. Then, just 4 years later, you have Raging Bull landing in theaters, offering this brutal, darker psychological portrait of a self-destructive man.
It's a shift from the hero to the anti-hero.
Precisely. And the fact that audiences were flocking to this darker story suggests the culture was ready for something heavier. They were willing to engage with a protagonist who wasn't just a good guy.
And here's a detail that I absolutely loved: the spoiler culture. The source warns listeners to go see it before everyone spoils the ending.
That really struck me too. We think of spoilers as this modern problem born of, Twitter and Reddit.
Right, if you don't see a movie at midnight, the internet ruins it by breakfast.
But here they are in 1980 warning each other in a garage.
It shows that movie-going was a communal conversation. You didn't have the internet, but you had the break room, the schoolyard, the bar. Information traveled slower, but it still traveled.
And if you weren't part of that first wave, the surprise was ruined by word of mouth. It reinforced that idea that you had to be there in the moment.
Speaking of being in the moment, let's switch gears to what was blasting out of the speakers in that garage. The source has this section called On the Radio, and honestly, it paints such a wild picture.
It really is a mixed bag, isn't it? It shows just how diverse and maybe a little chaotic the top 40 was.
Okay, first off, we have the man the hosts call the Dominator, Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, lady.
Lady. The source says it is absolutely everywhere. Grocery stores, cars, you name it. You could not escape Kenny Rogers in November 1980.
It's interesting to see a country crossover ballad holding that much cultural real estate. This was the peak of the whole urban cowboy movement.
Right.
Country music had moved from being this niche thing to the absolute center of American pop culture. It had this very broad mainstream appeal.
So you have this very safe, very smooth ballad just dominating the airwaves. But then, right next to Kenny Rogers, the source pivots to a moment that feels huge: the return of John Lennon.
Yes, and this is a really poignant part of the source material, especially knowing what we know now.
The hosts are so hyped. They're talking about the track just like starting over. They mentioned that Lennon had been silent for 5 years.
And that context is so important. 5 years is a lifetime in pop culture, especially back then. The Beatles had been broken up for a decade. Lennon had basically retreated to raise his son.
So for him to come back and for the song to be climbing the charts, it was a massive event.
The source specifically says it feels so good to hear his voice again. There is this genuine sense of warmth and welcome. It's not just, oh, a new song. It's, he's back.
It reflects a sense of optimism, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The song title itself, Starting Over, combined with that feeling from the listeners, it feels like a fresh start for the new decade.
Yeah.
The hosts in the garage truly believed this was the beginning of a new chapter for Lennon. It just adds this layer of tragedy for us reading it now, knowing he'd be gone in a few weeks. But in this moment, in November, it's pure joy. And just to keep us on our toes, to make sure we have total tonal whiplash, the source throws in one more earworm: Blondie. The tide is high.
Which brings in a completely different vibe from Kenny Rogers or John Lennon.
Totally. The source describes it as having a reggae vibe and being super catchy. The host complains, well, happily complains, that it's stuck in his head 24/7.
So if you look at that snapshot of the radio, you have a country ballad, a nostalgic rock return, and then Blondie bringing new wave with reggae influences.
That's a wild mix.
It is. That is a fascinating cross-section of what popular meant in late 1980. It wasn't just one sound, it was everything all at once.
And unlike today, where you can just curate a playlist of only the genre you like, back then you were at the mercy of the DJ. You got to listen to Kenny Rogers to get to Blondie.
Exactly. It was a shared playlist. Everyone was hearing the same strange mix of sounds.
Shared playlist is a good way to put it. But if we want to talk about a shared experience, there was one thing that was literally bringing civilization to a halt. We have to talk about the TV event.
The question that defined the year, maybe the whole decade.
Who shot J.R.?
It's almost hard to explain the magnitude of this to someone who didn't live through it or to a younger listener who's just used to on-demand streaming.
For sure. You watch what you want when you want.
But the source material really helps us understand the scale. They're talking about the show Dallas, and the specific date is marked on the calendar, Friday, November 21st.
A date that was apparently more important than any holiday. The host says, I hope you've cleared your Friday night. And then they list who is in on the betting pools.
And it's not just the fans.
No. It's the host's mom, it's the neighbor, it's the mailman.
That's the detail that sells it for me. The mailman. When the mailman is placing bets on a fictional TV mystery, you know you have reached peak cultural saturation.
It crossed all demographics.
All of them. It didn't matter if you were young, old, rich, poor. You were invested in this.
And the numbers backed it up. The source cites this massive statistic. 350 million people are expected to watch the reveal.
350 million, that is a staggering number. That's more than the entire population of the U.S. at the time. This was a global phenomenon.
A worldwide event. And the stakes were high for your social life, too. The source mentions the water cooler effect explicitly. They say, if you miss it, don't even bother coming to work on Monday.
Because you would be completely cut out of the conversation. That's the power of linear television in that era. Everyone saw the same thing at the exact same time.
No DVR.
No, I'll catch up on the weekend. You either watched it when it aired or you were left out. It created this shared reality that we don't really have in the same way anymore.
It's true. Even with big shows today, we watch them on our own schedules.
Yeah.
But Dallas forced synchronization. So on one hand, you have this massive communal experience. But then looking at the cutting edge section of the source, we start to see the technology shifting toward the individual.
Yes, the tech and toys section. This is where we see the future starting to creep in. And honestly, this is where that speed they talked about in the intro really comes from.
First up, the arcade. The host says his pockets are empty. Why? Because of a yellow circle. It has just arrived in the States from Japan, and the host admits, I'm addicted.
The addiction factor is key. The source compares it to Space Invaders, which was the previous king of the arcade, but they note that Pac-Man is way more fun.
It's a huge evolution in gameplay.
It is. Space Invaders was just shooting up at aliens, but the source points out that Pac-Man has character. They actually name the ghosts. Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde.
Right, which implies this level of engagement with the game's personality. These aren't just nameless targets, they're distinct antagonists. The host says they are ruining his life.
It's the gamification of stress. You're being chased through a maze. It's colorful, it's fast, it's relentless.
But the real game changer, the thing that honestly made me laugh out loud with how the source described it, is the portable audio.
The Sony Walkman. This is the pivotal moment in the document.
The host's buddy just got one, and the description is just pure gold. He says, you can literally walk around with headphones and listen to your own tapes.
And again, the use of the word literally there just highlights the novelty. It was a concept that had to be explained.
You're right.
Before this, music was tied to a place, the stereo in the living room, the radio in the car. You were tethered. The Walkman cut the cord.
And then he drops the hammer. He says it looks like something out of a sci-fi movie.
That is such a profound observation for November 1980. To us, seeing someone with headphones is the most mundane thing in the world. But back then,
He must have looked so strange.
seeing someone walking down the street, plugged into a machine, isolated from the world around them, it looked alien. It looked like a cyborg.
It really was a radical shift in public behavior.
It was. It was the moment we started building these little personal sound walls around ourselves. The source concludes that section by saying, the future is officially here, guys. And he was right.
He really was.
That shift from the communal radio where everyone hears the same song to the private Walkman where you curate your own soundtrack, that is the beginning of the modern era of consumption.
It's amazing to think about that contrast. In the same month, November 1980, you have the ultimate shared experience in Dallas,
350 million people.
glued to the screen together.
Yeah.
And at the exact same time, you have the birth of the ultimate soul experience with the Walkman.
It creates this fascinating tension.
Yeah.
The source captures this moment where society is balanced on a knife edge between the old world of mass media and the new world of personal tech.
And these two guys in the garage are standing right on the fault line, all while wearing stiff corduroy jackets and drinking tab.
And kicking leaves in the driveway. It grounds the whole thing.
Let's circle back to the beginning for a second. The host started by saying, life feels fast. After going through all this, the visceral movies, the global TV events, the sci-fi tech, do you think they were right?
Absolutely. Think about the sensory overload. You have the aggressive visual style of Raging Bull basically punching you in the face.
Right.
You have the addictive, repetitive stress of Pac-Man eating your quarters. You have the suspense of Dallas holding the world hostage. And you have the constant rotation of Kenny Rogers and Blondie.
There was a lot of input. It wasn't a sleepy time.
Not at all. We tend to romanticize the past as being slower or simpler. But this report from the garage shows us that people in 1980 felt just as bombarded by the new as we do today.
And they were doing it with this sense of excitement. That's the other thing I picked up from the Bro Talk style. They aren't scared of the future. They are hyped.
That enthusiasm is contagious. They love that Pac-Man is taking their money. They love that the Walkman looks like sci-fi. Even with a dark movie like Raging Bull, they're excited about the craft.
The transformation.
Yeah, the transformation of De Niro. It's
Yeah.
a very engaged way of looking at the world. They aren't cynical yet.
So what does this all mean for us looking back at this time capsule?
I think it reminds us that history isn't just big political events or dates in a textbook. It's the texture of daily life. It's the song you can't get out of your head.
It's the bet you made with your mailman.
Exactly. It's the feeling of a new jacket. This source, Nostalgia-AI Alive, it gives us the texture of November 1980.
It grounds the era. It stops being the 80s as some concept, shoulder pads and hair metal, and becomes a Tuesday afternoon in a garage.
Precisely. It humanizes the timeline.
I just keep thinking about that image of the Walkman being sci-fi. It's such a reminder of how quickly the future becomes the normal.
And how quickly we adapt. The host says the future is officially here, and he's right. But 5 years later, that Walkman wouldn't be sci-fi anymore. It would just be a Walkman.
So this is the moment of shock.
November 1980 captures that precise moment of shock right before the adaptation happens.
Well, we have unpacked a lot today. We've gone from the boxing ring with De Niro to the streets of Dallas with J.R., and from the neon glow of the arcade to the privacy of headphones.
It's been quite a journey through a single month.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to mull over. We talked about that tension between the massive shared audience of Dallas and the isolated personal world of the Walkman.
The communal versus the individual.
Exactly. November 1980 seems to be the moment where those two forces were perfectly equal, just standing side by side. My question is this. You could go back to that garage, knowing what you know now about how the world turned out. Would you rather be one of the 350 million sharing the moment, gasping at the TV with your neighbors? Or would you rather be the one person walking away with the headphones on, listening to your own personal beat, feeling like a time traveler?
It's a choice between connection and control.
Connection or control. That seems to be the legacy of November 1980. And maybe we're still trying to figure out the right balance.
I think we definitely are.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll catch you on the next one.